What's up and welcome to Fantasy Football Today, presented by BetMGM, the sportsbook born in Vegas. Adam Azer here with a couple of guys that I haven't forgotten about, Dave Richard and Jamey Eisenberg. Now today, we're talking about forgotten football players that throughout the offseason we just haven't spoken about enough. Maybe we've taken them for granted, and that was wrong. So we're sorry, Derrick Henry, Tony Pollard, James Conner. We're going to talk about you on today's show. Hello, Dave and Jamey. I have a random average draft position question before we get into the big topics today. Dave, I'll throw it to you first. Just looking at some ADP on Fantasy Pros. Amon-Ra St. Brown has the 7th highest ADP. None of you guys have him higher than 12th. That would be you, Jamey, and Heath. Why are the people wrong about Amon-Ra St. Brown taking him too early?
I think they're used to Amon-Ra St. Brown being a reliable, high volume, high touchdown fantasy receiver, and he could still be that. I still like him as a top 12 type of fantasy pick, but 7th overall just seems a little bit too soon given the other talent, particularly at running back, that we'll see going in the middle of drafts.
And Jamey, you just had the flex draft over the weekend, which was you and a bunch of industry cool people, analysts. I was too cool to show up, by the way. But how did the draft go, and why didn't you ask for my advice before it started?
Well, because I knew you would steer me in the wrong direction. But the draft went well. It's always a fun experience when you're drafting with 11 of the best people in the industry, and it's a great thing that Jake Seeley of The Athletic does to bring in some of the best analysts from what we do. It went well. Amon-Ra St. Brown actually went in round 2. I had he went right in front of me, one pick in front of me. So I had the 6th pick. I started with CeeDee Lamb and almost had Amon-Ra St. Brown in round 2, but ended up with A.J. Brown. So not bad.
Oh, man. That would have been a much better pick if you got an Amon-Ra St. Brown, but yeah, you couldn't control it. That's pretty interesting that he went in the middle of round 2. You don't usually see him going that late. All right, anyway, we got some training camp notes before we get into the forgotten players. We're getting enough stories, enough beat reporters talking about what's going on to kind of take a look at some winners and losers. So I'm going to ask you, would you rather have player A or player B? This is sort of based on what's been going on in training camp. So the first one is, would you rather have James Cook, who is holding in, did not practice on Sunday because he wants a new contract, or Omarion Hampton, Jamey, who's so far got this clear path to being RB1 for the Chargers? But, of course, Najee Harris, his return does loom. Would you rather have James Cook or Omarion Hampton?
Yeah, and Cook did not practice on Monday either, so who knows how long this is going to linger. So I'd rather have Omarion Hampton at this point. Hold-ins, hold-outs, they make me nervous. We've seen the track record over the last 2 years. You go back to 2023, 2 running backs that had contract situations, Jonathan Taylor and James why am I blanking? Packers running back. Josh Jacobs, yes. I wanted to say Brandon Jacobs for a second. Both those guys dealing with contract situations in 2023. Taylor had his 2nd worst season of his career. Jacobs had the worst season of his career. This is not a great situation for James Cook, who saw everything except his touchdowns go down, and his touchdowns spiked in such a tremendous way that it's hard for him to replicate that type of production. They're very similar in terms of their profiles because I don't think the receptions are going to be the thing that carries them. I think it's going to be a lot of what they do on the ground, and at this point I'm willing to trust Omarion Hampton in his role with the Chargers, especially with Najee Harris with the eye situation, more so than I am James Cook right now. So I will take Hampton over Cook.
And Dave Richard?
It's kind of a TBD for now. I do have Cook ahead of Omarion Hampton. This is the first week of August. By the time we get to the 3rd week of August, if James Cook is still sitting out, easy call to put Hampton ahead of Cook. But if Najee Harris comes back and starts to get a couple of weeks worth of practice, I'm a little scared that the Chargers are going to give him just enough work to hamper Omarion Hampton. I like both these guys. I think they're both worth taking in the first 3 rounds. But for now, give me Cook at the beginning of round 3, Hampton at the end of round 3.
And honestly, I still think it's just too early to be drafting. I know a lot of you agree, but you don't have to draft right now. Just wait, get as much information as you possibly can. This is coming from someone who took R.J. Harvey in a dynasty rookie draft before J.K. Dobbins signed, so a little bit bitter about that.
Wrong with that.
I mean, it still lowers his value. You got to say it lowers his value. He would have been a much better pick before J.K. Dobbins.
Yes, but you're not looking at just 2025. You're looking at the rest of his career. That's the point.
2025 matters. 2025 absolutely matters.
Not for your crappy team. You're good.
Well, there's someone else who owns my first round pick. So, I was trying to make a good pick for him. Anyway, let's get back to the Jaguars here and this training camp battle. Tank Bigsby versus Travis Etienne. Bigsby, Dave, continues to run with the ones, and Etienne maybe playing more of a pass catching role. But who would you rather have right now, Tank Bigsby or Travis Etienne?
I know this sounds crazy, but I think it should be Bigsby. But it's not by much, and I think that these are both mid-round types of running backs. But Bigsby getting a lot of work with the first-team offense, and we know from last year, Adam, his efficiency metrics as a runner blew away Travis Etienne. I mean, Etienne was beat up a little bit, so that's part of the problem, but Bigsby really showed out last year why he belongs in the National Football League after a dud rookie season. Bigsby also probably the best candidate to work in short yardage and goal line. I just don't want to overrate either of these running backs because I think it's going to end up being a committee all year. And frankly, I think the Jaguars offense will be a lot more pass friendly this year, which isn't great for either of these runners.
They like Bashal Tutin a lot. I think we're going to see Travis Etienne a lot. I think Dave said it best. You don't want to reach for any of these guys, but right now, if you are drafting a Jaguars running back first, it should be Tank Bigsby coming off the board.
All right. One guy that's on Jamey's flex team was Joe Mixon. And Jamey, you can tell us where you drafted him, which got great value on him. So Mixon, latest report is that he's recovering well from his foot/ankle injuries and might be ready for week one. Meanwhile, Kaleb Johnson's having a good camp for the Pittsburgh Steelers. So Jamey and then Dave, who would you rather have, Kaleb Johnson or Joe Mixon?
I'd rather have Kaleb Johnson now, and that probably will be the case just because Mixon still makes me nervous knowing that he is a little bit older, coming off a very successful season, but the Texans' offensive line could be worse. I think it could be a tough season for Houston if they can't obviously block, and we'll see how much Mixon continues to dominate touches. 7th in terms of touches per game last year, but now they add Nick Chubb, they draft Woody Marks. We could see those guys maybe take a few touches away from Mixon, so it just lowers his value a little bit. But in terms of Johnson, the biggest concern right now is can he pass protect? Because if he can't do that, they have two guys that they trust in Jalen Warren, and I know this is going to make people sound a little disgusted, but Kenneth Gainwell, one of the two of the better pass protecting running backs last year are on the Steelers roster. So we know protecting Aaron Rodgers is obviously critical for a guy of his age. So I think we could see a lot of Jalen Warren and not as much Kaleb Johnson as we like. And keep in mind, Arthur Smith, offense coordinator, they drafted Bijan Robinson once upon a time and played Tyler Algier a little bit too much for our liking as well. So I still like Johnson better than Mixon, especially while Mixon's banged up. Ask me again when Mixon's back on the field, but I don't know if that will be in week one. So for now, I will take Johnson over Mixon, and I drafted Mixon in round 8 just because the value was too good in that league.
I basically co-sign everything that Jamey said. I like Johnson over Mixon as well, but if Mixon comes back in late August like he did last training camp, then he could be all systems go and worth maybe a top 50 pick, much less round 8 is really round 8. That's amazing. And that's the kind of thing, if there's a takeaway here, it's that when players are in the news for negative reasons, their ADP slides. And that's absolutely what's happening for Joe Mixon. It dips. That's the term that we use, Adam. You should buy the dip on Joe Mixon. If he's falling to round 8, we know what he's capable of doing. It's a long football season. It might stink to begin the year, but you'll be happy you've got a player of that caliber in a good Houston offense later on in the season.
Khalil Shakir injured for the Buffalo Bills. High ankle sprain. Let's call him week to week right now as we still have a month before the season starts. But Dave, who would you rather have, Khalil Shakir or second-year receiver Keon Coleman, who's apparently having a very good camp for the Bills?
Yeah, and I've got Khalil Shakir by a nose over Keon Coleman in my rankings, and I don't know if I can even justify it because Khalil Shakir we view as a high floor wide receiver, a guy that might get you 12 PPR points per game. It'll be even worse than that in non-PPR, and we've seen so many players just fall off because of a high ankle sprain. If that's his injury, that's what they're reporting. I'm nervous about Khalil Shakir all season. So let's do it. Let's put Keon Coleman ahead of Khalil Shakir. I love what I've seen out of Bills camp. There are plays where he's mossing defensive backs on Buffalo, by the way. That's a good defense. And even getting held and he's making one-handed catches in the end zone could easily end up being Josh Allen's number one guy, especially since he now has a leg up for the next 5 weeks on Khalil Shakir being the top target there. Coleman.
I'll still take Shakir, but I think it comes down to your roster build because now we're going to see Shakir fall to a range where Keon Coleman's probably been getting drafted. So if you're looking for the most upside, I think that does favor Coleman. What we saw from him last year, the 2 games prior to the wrist injury he suffered against the Dolphins, he was finally starting to look like things were clicking for him. Then he comes back from the wrist injury and he was really not playing at the same level. Who knows how hurt he was. I think there's so many moving parts for this Bills offense. Dalton Kincaid, who was terrible last year, playing through 2 knee injuries, has the knee soreness, but he's back at practice. He could easily be the top target for this Bills offense. Josh Palmer, somebody that they're really high on. You talk about positive reports for Keon Coleman. They're even better for Josh Palmer at this point. And Elijah Moore is somebody I think that we always say, okay, kind of overlook, but somebody that I think could make some plays and did make some plays for the Browns last year, could step into that Khalil Shakir role. So I think it's one of these offenses, these passing games, and now the running back situation where just draft Josh Allen. If you really want a piece of the Bills offense, that's the guy you go get. But Coleman, I think, again, if you're looking for the upside play, it's easily to go with him. Shakir, I still think, has the safer floor. I'll still take Shakir over Coleman right now, though, if you're just talking about rankings.
Yeah, Allen last year talked about how the goal was really to spread the ball around. So I don't know if he's ever going to target someone enough to be super consistent in fantasy, but he's obviously got 35 touchdown potential, and you definitely want pieces of the Bills offense. All right, last one. Kaleb Williams, not having a great camp. Things aren't going so well there. Would you rather have, Jamey, Drake Maye, or Kaleb Williams?
Yeah, I made this switch a couple weeks ago. I think Drake Maye is in a better spot right now, coming off a strong rookie season by comparison to Kaleb Williams. They obviously both got a lot of changes this offseason that I think will benefit them. For Maye, offense coordinator improvement with Josh McDaniels, weapons across the board with Stephon Diggs, Kyle Williams, TreVeyon Henderson. All these guys have been very strong in training camp so far. And Maye showed the ability to run the ball, would have been on pace if you take his 10 healthy games and you Azer stat the crap out of this one, would have been on pace for 630 rushing yards, which would have been third among quarterbacks behind Lamar Jackson and Jayden Daniels. Kaleb Williams has such a huge ceiling. Hopefully he lives up to the billing and starts to perform like the number 1 overall pick, and obviously got a lot of upgrades this offseason as well, as we're all aware of. I just think Drake Maye's in a better spot right now. His camp has been better. His rookie season was better. I'll take the guy who's going to run a little bit more. Give me Drake Maye all day.
It's Maye easily. The only thing in Kaleb Williams' advantage is the talent at receiving core that Chicago has, and he hasn't been able to really take advantage of that in training camp. But you go back to last year, and it's a different offense. Jamey mentioned this. Completion rate in Maye's favor. Yards per attempt, Drake Maye's favor. Touchdown rate, Drake Maye's favor. And we know that Drake Maye will run more than Kaleb Williams. This one's easy. Drake Maye over Kaleb.
Easy. Okay, it's easy. And all right. Well, look, they
Adam,
agreed.
I think the better question is, what would the Bears do right now if they had the choice of making this decision a year ago?
They'd take Jayden Daniels.
Yeah, listen, Kaleb Williams can still make some jaw-dropping plays. He's got incredible arm talent, but hopefully he can put it together and make it happen.
So can Drake Maye, by the way.
Yeah, but not like Kaleb. I don't think it's a stretch, honestly.
Like
No, I don't think so. I think Kaleb Williams.
I do.
You ready for this? Are you sitting down, Dave?
Hold on. Yes.
Okay. Kaleb Williams might have the best arm in football. Oh! And with that, we're going to break. When we come back, Jamey's players to remember for 2025. We'll be right back. All right, welcome back, everybody. We're talking about players that you need to remember, players that we haven't talked about enough. That's the point of this segment here. Obviously, Derrick Henry, you're going to see on this list for Jamey. We know who Derrick Henry is. He's not a late-round pick, but we just sort of have taken him for granted a little bit throughout the offseason. And obviously, if you listen to our podcast, when we get into the running backs on Tuesday and Wednesday, we'll talk a lot about Derrick Henry, but he's just a guy that sits there in early round 2 or late round 1. And it's kind of late ADP for someone who's been a top 4 running back per game in 5 of the last 6 seasons. But it's understandable because he's obviously up there in age. So let's take a look at Jamey's players to remember, 6 players that we haven't focused on enough. Derrick Henry would be the headliner here. We've also got Josh Jacobs, TreVeyon Henderson, Tetairoa McMillan, Cooper Kupp, and Jakobi Meyers. Take it away, Jamey.
Yeah, McMillan, it feels like we spoke a little bit about on our podcast on Monday. So I guess there's a little bit more recency from what he's been doing in camp. But in terms of the first 2 running backs, I feel like they kind of get sort of overlooked when we have these conversations because, like you mentioned, Henry, late round 1, early round 2. Think about the guys that are going in that same range depending on average draft position. This is where McCaffrey comes into the conversation and obviously needs to be talked about a lot. Ashton Genty in his rookie season, Devon Achane coming off an amazing year with Tua Tagovailoa last year, and how good can he be if Tua stays healthy for a full season. So Henry kind of gets lost in the shuffle a little bit, especially when you start to compare him to the wide receivers in that mix. He's sort of one of these easy guys, similar to what you were saying about Amon-Ra St. Brown, just a consistent, strong producer that's going to be in the top 5 mix that I think a lot of people, when they draft him, they're like, oh, okay, I'll just settle for Derrick Henry. I'll settle for Amon-Ra St. Brown. And then by the end of the season, you're like, wow, I'm thrilled I got this guy. I've obviously been very anti-Henry the last couple of seasons as he's gotten older, and he just keeps giving the stiff arm to Father Time just because he's been so successful. So it's hard to doubt him at this point. I think if you do take him at the 1-2 turn, you get him early in round 2. I don't think he'll be a round 1 pick in PPR. Half and non's a different conversation. You just got to be thrilled with Derrick Henry. And then when it comes to Josh Jacobs, he's in a similar conversation because we get to that back end of round 2, middle to the back end of round 2. And really, it's kind of similar to Jonathan Taylor, but it's Chase Brown, it's Bucky Irving, it's still Kyron Williams. It's all these guys that, have a lot of reasons to be discussed. Jacobs is in another great spot. And now, oh, by the way, Marshawn Lloyd, who may be taking some carries away from him, hurt once again, dealing with a groin injury for the Packers. So the depth chart behind him in Green Bay is just easy to say. Josh Jacobs, a strong pick in round 2, could have another successful season where he's 1,500 total yards, chance for 10-plus touchdowns, will be around 40-plus receptions. Just an easy round 2 pick that could be in that top 10, potentially top 5 conversation. Just a safe round 2 pick that has still so much upside. TreVeyon Henderson is going to be a fun one to see how this all plays out. Ramondre Stevenson said today at Patriots practice that you better be ready to run with him because he's so fast and he's starting to make a lot of highlights. Could be the next James White type of player for Josh McDaniels, but just a great pass catcher that could do a little bit more in the run game. And I think for all 3 of the receivers, McMillan obviously is going to have a lot of hype based on his role for the Panthers. But Cooper Kupp, who knows? We haven't heard really anything from a negative standpoint so far. Maybe what we saw at the beginning of last season sort of replicates itself, at least early in the season for Seattle, and he could be the go-to guy for Sam Darnold. And then I think just when you look at the situation when it comes to Jakobi Meyers, we're focusing on Genty, we're focusing on Brock Bowers, understandably so. Meyers is really going to stand out, I think, compared to the rookies, at least early in the season when it comes to Jack Besh and Thornton, and still be a go-to guy for Geno Smith, who may throw the ball a little bit more than we expect. So Meyers is a great late-round target to just sort of be similar to what Dave said about Khalil Shakir, a good floor play for your fantasy team.
And last year, Jakobi Meyers, 14.5 PPR points per game. And you might say to yourself, you know what? I don't know if the Raiders are going to throw it as much. And you'd be right because Ashton Genty's there and it's a completely different coaching staff. But even the year before, 13.8 PPR points per game. That's pretty good. And I think that he's absolutely the type of receiver, no one's talking about him, but you can put him on your bench or even use him as a wide receiver 3. And I think that you'll be okay with him. I think as long as Cooper Kupp is healthy, I think you can say the exact same thing about him. There was a stretch as recently as 2024 when Cooper Kupp was getting plenty of targets and putting up huge fantasy numbers. It was with the Rams. It wasn't with the Seahawks. But the offense in Seattle is going to look a lot like the offense in LA. And I think Cooper Kupp will end up playing slot most of the time for the Seattle Seahawks. And I think in the case of TreVeyon Henderson, I'm worried about reaching for him because the talent is undeniable. I think he could eventually become a 3-down back. His size is a little bit underwhelming. And so I wonder if there's going to be a long process that plays out in the backfield in New England where Ramondre Stevenson just plays too much and he takes away too many carries and maybe even short yardage carries from TreVeyon Henderson. What I'd like to see is Henderson and Stevenson split running downs work to begin the season. And then, as soon as Ramondre Stevenson fumbles the ball away, TreVeyon takes off. I like TreVeyon in the round 5-6 turn. I'm worried, Adam, that TreVeyon Henderson will get picked before then because somebody else in my leagues will be much more excited about him.
Yeah, well, he's got, let's say, 2 kind of older guys, James Conner and David Montgomery. You could pick them or TreVeyon Henderson, Dave. Which direction do you go?
Conner for sure. And I think I've got Montgomery ranked ahead of Henderson as well, but it's close in PPR. It's not close in half and non-PPR.
Yeah, Henderson is really interesting because I do want pieces of this rookie running back class. It was hyped as one of the best running back classes in a really long time. And, it is a steep price to pay for RJ Harvey, TreVeyon Henderson, Kaleb Johnson. Judkins was in this mix. He isn't anymore. But yeah, that one's interesting, guys. I never draft Jakobi Meyers. And on Fantasy Pros, Jakobi Meyers is going about 90th, 94th overall. And I think it's interesting. The guy going right after him is Khalil Shakir. And I view them sort of similarly. maybe high floor, but I'm going to say maybe high floor for Jakobi Meyers. I would say probably definitely high floor for Khalil Shakir, but maybe for Jakobi Meyers. He has been a top 30 wide receiver in full PPR per game 3 straight years. So that can't be lost on us, but he's never finished higher than 24th per game. I don't see much of a ceiling, so I don't know. I'm probably passing over him and then taking shots on the Keon Colemans of the world. I think Christian Kirk is a better version of Jakobi Meyers that you can get maybe 2 or 3 rounds later. So I'm glad we are bringing him up. But Jamey, I don't think I've drafted Meyers once, and I don't plan on it really.
That's fine, and I don't think what you said is so egregious outside of the Christian Kirk comment, because I think Kirk's had 1 season above 13 PPR points per game, where Jakobi Meyers, you just said, has had 3 in a row. So Kirk's career arc, I don't think necessarily will get to the point where Jakobi Meyers is right now. And when you talk about first or second on the team in targets, on their own team in targets, I think Jakobi Meyers is going to live there. Again, we'll see how much Besh or Thornton step up in their rookie seasons. We know Bauer should lead the Raiders in targets if things go based on what we saw in 2024 and how his career arc should profile. I just think Meyers is getting a little bit overlooked too much for what he should continue to do for the Raiders and that guy for Geno Smith. So I don't mind you taking shots, or I don't mind anybody taking shots on some of those high upside plays, but I do think Meyers sort of gets overlooked in terms of where he can finish. So in terms of upside, you tell me I'm getting the 30th best wide receiver as the 40th, 45th guy off the board. I'll take that all day.
And Shakir last year, 12.2 PPR points per game. That's the best he's ever done. That was with 2 healthy ankles, by the way. That's worse than each of the last 3 seasons for Jakobi Meyers. Easy call to take Meyers over Shakir.
I guess. Christian Kirk, by the way, has had a 12.8 points per game season and a 12.9 points per game season. So on the technicality, Jamey gets it there. All right, guys, Dave's got some players he wants you to remember, including James Conner and David Montgomery, we just briefly spoke about, and I'll ask him to compare those guys to other rookies and like RJ Harvey and Kaleb Johnson. All right, we'll talk about that after this break on Fantasy Football Today. We are back on Fantasy Football Today. Well, we're talking about players to remember. Takes to remember. Maybe we should not remember the take I gave at the end of the A block. Just maybe. I think, honestly, I think it could end up being a very good take. I said Caleb Williams has the best arm in the NFL. We're going to have to wait and see. But, I was just watching some highlights, and he threw a 75-yard touchdown pass in college. And one of the commenters agrees with me that he has a great arm. So that seems fairly official to me. Anyway, we welcome you back. Dave, let's take a look at the list of players that you think we haven't spoken enough about. And I agree with you on Jalen Hurts, right? He's at the top of your list. Jalen Hurts only threw 18 touchdown passes in 15 games. He what'd you say? Oh, I'm sorry.
I didn't say anything.
Oh, well, you should have.
I'm ready to jump in, though. You might be daydreaming about Caleb Williams at this point. I have literally no idea what's going on at your end of the camera. So what do you say I just talk about Jalen Hurts for a minute? And the fact that he's going off the board as QB5 tells me that there's an advantage that a fantasy manager can create for himself or herself by taking Jalen Hurts. He had 24.8 fantasy points per game last year. Don't forget about this. From week 1 all the way through till week 15. Week 16, suffered a concussion, didn't finish the regular season. We saw how he played in the playoffs, and namely the Super Bowl. The guy can sling it, and we know that he can run it. Huge upside for this quarterback. And I think if you're drafting him with modest expectations, 23, 24 fantasy points per game, that's pretty good. And he's got upside for more. Jamey and I both have a little bit of reservations about Saquon Barkley and how effective he'll be in his year coming off of 400 plus carries. I think Jalen Hurts shouldn't be forgotten about on draft day. I think that he's absolutely a guy to target. I think you could say the same thing about Mahomes as quarterbacks after round 3 to kind of keep your radar up for, because I think that's great value, especially compared to other quarterbacks.
All right, you also have James Conner, Chuba Hubbard, David Montgomery, Tony Pollard. So 4 running backs on your list, and Deebo Samuel at wide receiver. He's got a running back too, but James Conner,
Yeah.
Chuba Hubbard, David Montgomery, and Tony Pollard. Ooh, boy, another report about Tajay Spears getting a bigger role. I'm nervous about Pollard, but of those 4, how many of them are you excited about this year? Conner, Chubbard, Montgomery, and Pollard.
I'm definitely excited about Connor. I'm excited about Hubbard. I love what we saw from Chuba last year, and Connor really ever since he stepped foot in Arizona, he's been outstanding. I'm skeptical about David Montgomery, and I think Tony Pollard can be okay. You know, we're getting these reports about Tajay Spears, and I love Tajay Spears, don't get it wrong, but I do think that Tony Pollard is still going to be the 1A back in what should be an improved Tennessee offense with a good offensive line. He averaged 12.5 fantasy points per game. That's no good. But in 11 games where Pollard had at least 15 touches last year, 14.8 PPR points per game, and you're able to get him in that round 6 type of range, I think that's good value for Tony Pollard, who could be a low-end number 2 starting running back for your fantasy team. Let's keep talking good about James Conner. I know he's turning 30 years old this year, but you know what? Here's what he's done ever since he's been in Arizona. It's 4 years. At least 15 PPR points per game. At least 11 non-PPR points per game. This dude's good, and I know that he's always a risk to miss some playing time. It's a real easy solution. You draft James Conner. I don't mind taking him in round 4. You might find him in round 5. It's an insane value. And then you can draft Trey Benson. Yeah, they're talking about co-RB1s in Arizona. I don't buy it for a second. I think Trey Benson more of a handcuff than a 1B running back in the desert. And Chuba Hubbard, he proved himself last year, 16.1 PPR points per game in Carolina. That's another team with an improved offense, an offensive line that's good. I don't care that they added Rico Dowdle. That doesn't shake me at all. I think Chuba Hubbard's right in that same range as James Conner. And that brings us to Montgomery, who averaged almost 16 PPR points per game last year. But I feel like the writing's on the wall in Detroit right now, where they want to get the ball in Jahmyr Gibbs' hands more, Jameson Williams' hands more. They've got a lot of explosive young talent. And David Montgomery, he's the older back in this offense, the older player in this offense. He's 28 years old. He could still score double-digit touchdowns. I'm worried about the carries. I'm worried about the catches. I'm worried about that volume for David Montgomery. I wouldn't draft him unless it felt like a value. And to me, that value comes in late round 5. Last but not least, Deebo. He's worth talking about because Terry McLaurin is holding out and he's on a new team, but he should be used in the same way that he was on his old team. And that's a change of pace to their run game. Not saying that he's going to get a lot of carries like he did once upon a time in San Francisco. He should get a lot of short area targets. Take some pressure off of the other pass catchers there. Make plays after the catch. That takes pressure off of Jaden Daniels, by the way. And his yak ability, Adam, that's only going to help Jaden Daniels' yardage numbers, and it's going to help Deebo Samuel stay relevant. Again, somebody that I want to draft at value. I'm thinking round 7 in full PPR for Deebo.
All right. Jamey, your reaction to Dave's list of players that we need to talk more about?
I think in terms of Connor, it's interesting what he said about Benson. So we'll see if they do try to take a little bit of work off his plate. We know Kyler Murray's going to run a little bit more. We'll see how that much impacts Connor. But I think round 5 is the perfect spot for him. I wouldn't take him before that. I think Chuba Hubbard's a good pick in round 4. Looking at the competition, we'll see if maybe they give a few opportunities. Remember last year, Miles Sanders was the second guy. He kind of struggled when he got those chances. We'll see if they give a few of those chances to Rico Dowdle. And don't forget about Travis Etienne, who could be a factor in the passing game based on what he did in college. So could take a few receptions off of Hubbard, but I think that's minimal just based on what these two guys can potentially do. Pollard and Montgomery make me a little bit nervous, and I just drafted Pollard in the flex league because of the way that running backs were coming off the board. Half PPR versus full PPR, I think, does benefit him. Of those 11 games that Dave referenced, Tajay Spears missed 5 of those. So if he does get hurt again and we see him off the field, then that's certainly a benefit to Pollard. His numbers, understandably so, popped when there was no Spears. I typically tend, if I'm drafting the Titans running backs, to let somebody else take Tony Pollard, and I settle for Tajay Spears. Is the way that my roster build was. in a league with a bunch of analysts, it felt like the right time to take Pollard. I tried to get both of those guys. Spears didn't go far after him. So I think Pollard's a good settle for running back. I think you want him more as a flex, or if you're doing a hero RB or zero RB build, he fits more in that type of format, which is the way that I built my team with a hero RB roster. I think in case of Montgomery, double-digit touchdowns should be there for him because of how this offense operates. But he's missed time each of the last 2 seasons. That's when we've seen Jahmyr Gibbs' numbers absolutely go astronomical. And if they are going to use both guys on the field at the same time, I think that's really going to hurt David Montgomery's reception totals because, Adam, you bring this up a lot, how Montgomery was doing a better job catching the ball early in the season compared to Jahmyr Gibbs, and that was a little bit of a strange surprise for us. But I think Gibbs can get from that 52 reception total to maybe north of 60. I think that comes at the expense of David Montgomery, so we're looking at probably 20 plus receptions for him at best. And so Montgomery, I tend to take TreVeyon Henderson, just to tie in a couple guys we talked about. TreVeyon Henderson before Montgomery in full PPR. I think you make a case for RJ Harvey over Montgomery as well, just given the potential for those two rookies in the passing game.
Coming up next on Fantasy Football Today, our Players to Remember theme continues with some Name That Player. I'll give some clues. We'll see if Dave and Jamey can get it. We'll be right back. So how well do Dave and Jamey know these players? We are about to find out. I wish we were playing Who Has More, because that's America's 13th favorite fantasy football game show. But this is 14th. This is right behind it. Name that player. Here we go. First player. Let's bring it up. All right. Some clues. I'll give you guys some clues. No wrong answers don't matter. I have been top 12 at my position 2 straight seasons. All right. In my first 11 games of the season, I was number 16 at my position. Ooh, not good. But in my last 6 games, I averaged 15.4 PPR fantasy points per game. I was on pace for 99 catches, 1,094 yards, 9 touchdowns on 130 targets. I had a 72.3% catch rate, which amazingly was only 20th best among tight ends. There you go. He's a tight end. And I have 17 touchdown catches in 33 career games.
Dave.
Yes, Dave.
Is this Mark Andrews?
No. It's been top 12 2 straight seasons.
Sam Laporta.
It is Sam Laporta.
Oh.
Dave, horrible guess. No, I'm not just kidding. No, Laporta, but look, like Andrews, Laporta's going to have to get some touchdowns, right? But he's been pretty reliable there. Sam Laporta, maybe a 5th or 6th round pick in most leagues, in most 12-team leagues. And Jamey, you got it right. So how are you feeling about Sam Laporta?
I think he's in the top 5 mix. I don't think you want to take him over the top 3 guys, which I think are pretty well locked in with McBride, Bowers, McBride, whatever order you want to put them in, and George Kittle. Then he's in that next group when it comes to Travis Kelce and TJ Hawkinson and David Njoku, and maybe you want to throw Evan Ingram up there, maybe even Mark Andrews now with the Isaiah Likely news. I think Laporta is going to build off what he did at the end of last season, and I think the biggest concern would be, are they going to need him to block because of some of the offensive line changes, so that maybe throws him off a little bit from his route running. We could obviously see, Dave alluded to this before, Jameson Williams taking a significant step forward, and that really impacts Laporta, which I think is what happened in the beginning part of last season over the course of the year. But I think he's just kind of one of those guys that you kind of know what you're getting. He's going to be touchdown dependent. He's a guy that Jared Goff's going to really rely on. And as we saw, when they needed to throw the ball a little bit more, when they needed to be a little bit more offensive toward the end of the season because of all those defensive injuries, which may be happening again, we could see Laporta still be a huge factor. So a very good settle for elite level tight end, if that makes sense. So you don't want to reach for him on draft day like we were doing a year ago, making a mistake. I think if you get to that round 5 range, end of round 5, beginning round 6, certainly falls later than that, it's an easy auto pick, but don't take him in the first 4 rounds. Back end of round 5 is the start of the sweet spot for him.
Okay. Jamey gets the first one. Let's go to our second one. Many people say I have the strongest arm in the NFL. No, just kidding. Name the player. Since entering the NFL, I am 6th in yards per carry. I am on my 3rd team in 3 seasons. I averaged 5.2 yards per carry last season, but only 3.8 yards per carry after week 2. I had a career high 32 catches in 2024. I can't believe you guys don't get to me. I was like, man, this
J.K.
is too
Dobbins.
easy. There it is. I have suffered a torn ACL and torn Achilles.
Oh yeah.
This thing that stands out, Jamey wins. Actually, next one's worth triple the points, so don't worry about it. The thing that really stands out to me is that J.K. Dobbins got off to this incredible start last year, and then he really wasn't good for the rest of the season. And of course, he suffered a midseason injury. But Dave, should we be looking at that? Because the first two games were, 22.9 fantasy points, 20.1 fantasy points. He had 3 carries of 43 or more yards. And then he kind of struggled after that. Does that matter? Or do you just kind of look at the whole body of work for J.K. Dobbins and say, this guy's been a really good running back, and he's still only 26 years old?
Yeah, but you have to add the asterisk, which is when healthy. And the poor guy has suffered so many injuries that have robbed him of his natural talent that now he finds himself in a part-time role in Denver. I think there would be it would take a calamity. RJ Harvey would have to struggle or miss playing time for J.K. Dobbins to become a feature back for the Broncos. And until that happens, I think we should feel good about J.K. Dobbins being a part-time player, playing on passing downs, being a pass protector for Bo Nix. And he can still give us some decent fantasy production in that role, just not necessarily be the guy who averaged almost 15 PPR points per game last season, almost 16 in his first 10 games. Yeah, I think it's a different situation for him. And while it might not mean great things for his fantasy numbers, it should mean good things for his career because he'll take on less work in Denver.
So why should I not be drafting Dobbins ahead of RJ Harvey? I mean, it's like this. I always mention, and this time last year, Gus Edwards was going ahead of J.K. Dobbins. Dobbins is a very accomplished running back, and I'm not, for the record, not taking him ahead of RJ Harvey, but I don't have to strain to see how he could be better than him. He's the primary running downs back. Maybe he's the goal line guy. He can catch the ball a little bit. And they've got the best offensive line in football, by the way, according to some. So, Jamey, why is it so easy to take Harvey ahead of Dobbins?
I think just upside. Again, despite the fact that Dobbins had this amazing season, you said it. He missed time again last year, and clearly there was a reason he was still on the market. Maybe it was his contract, and he was asking for too much money, and nobody wanted to sign him, or maybe he's just smart to go to the Chargers last year, where there was a clear path to success based on the backfield, and here going to a team where he knows he's playing behind a great offensive line in a great system that is going to use 2 running backs. Remember, he signed after the draft, so he knew RJ Harvey was going to be there. I think it's just one of those situations where you want to take maybe both of these guys. Dave talked about this with the Cardinals guys. Like, it's kind of easy to take both Broncos running backs because Harvey goes in that round 5, round 6 range. Dobbins is still basically free on draft day at this point, going almost near round 10. So you can get both of these guys, see how it plays itself out. And maybe when Dobbins, just follows the career path, does get hurt at some point, then Harvey's numbers take off, similar to what happened to Jahmyr Gibbs when David Montgomery misses time. So I'd rather have Harvey as well, but it's easy to put Dobbins on your bench to see what happens.
All right, so it's Jamey 2-0. This one's worth triple the points. Let's see who's going to win. Name that player. Last one. Since entering the NFL, I rank 13th among wide receivers in yards per route run. Last season, the leading receiver on my team had 548 yards.
Oy.
I have 10 touchdown catches in 39 career games. Another oy. I gained 80 or more yards in 4 of my last 5 healthy games in 2024. How about that? And I have played with 6 different quarterbacks in 3 seasons. And I might play with 3 different quarterbacks, if not more.
Oh, Cedric Tillman.
No, another team with a horrible quarterback situation. Another team where they would be surprised the leading receiver if they throw for 540 yards this year. Chris Olave, Jamey with the sweep.
Wow.
Jamey, let me read to you the leaders in yards per route run since Olave entered the league. Look at this list. Puka Nacua, Tyreek Hill, A.J. Brown, Justin Jefferson, Nico Collins, Rashee Rice, CeeDee Lamb, Brian Thomas Jr., Amon-Ra St. Brown, Ladd McConkey, Brandon Ayuk, Jalen Waddle, Chris Olave. I still feel like there's a good football player there, Jamey. I just don't know if we're going to see it. What do you think?
I said this to you before. Last year we got Chris Godwin and everybody was sort of writing him off and just was one of the best values on draft day. And Olave feels like he could be that guy, but there are so many things that have to break right. I just think it's just so hard to bank on Olave becoming that type of player. He's a good late number 3 wide receiver. He's part of the blob, 20 to 40, like we talk about a lot, but he's toward the end of that. I don't want to trust Chris Olave as a starter unless it's a stacked roster and he's my 3rd receiver in a 3-receiver league where I already have a flex. It's probably a running back. I just think if you can take him with the chance of him hitting, you're in great spot. The concussions also are a big concern. He's suffered so many concussions. I think it's 5 documented ones. Who knows how many others? So bad quarterback, injury history. There's a lot to like. There's also a lot to fear.
I would be worried about. Oh, sorry, Adam.
Go ahead, Dave. Give me.
No,
20 seconds.
I'm worried about him staying on the field, and this is another receiver who's just plagued rather by bad quarterback play throughout the entire course of his career. I wonder if he's going to follow the same trajectory as Terry McLaurin, which is year after year of ugly numbers, and then he's finally linked with a good quarterback, and he pops. I don't think that's happening this year. This isn't a guy to go after with one of your first 70 picks.
Yeah, but he's going 81st, so I think that's okay. And honestly, I think Chris Olave has the best arm in the NFL. We're going to take a break, but when we come back, we love hearing from our audience. We love hearing from you, so we asked you for your questions on X, and we're going to read them when we come back. All right, let's see what's on your mind. This is from Walter W. Rogers Jr. That is a tongue twister there. 10-team PPR. He's keeping Brian Thomas Jr. in the 14th round. Nice work. Okay, he's got the 10th pick. Dave, who should he go with the back-to-back picks at the end of the first round? Who should he target?
I mean, I have no idea who else is being kept in his league, but I would look for another wide receiver and a running back with those 2 picks. You've already got the stud in BTJ. Back it up with, hopefully, a top 10 wide receiver after that, and maybe a top 10 running back.
All right. Let's go to our next question here. He's pretty good. Will Hunting.
He's good.
Should I keep? Yeah, Justin Fields in the 12th round, Gibbs in the 2nd round, or T. Higgins in the 6th round, Jamey?
I'd only keep Justin Fields if it's a super flex or 2 quarterback league. Gibbs in round 2 is pretty fantastic. T. Higgins is a 3rd round pick at this point, so the value for basically both those guys, if you're looking at it, Gibbs could be a top 3 overall pick. So I would go with Gibbs. And how do you like them apples?
There's no way. There's no way this is his real name, right? We got to find out. Will, write us back. All right, next question is from, there it is. It's from Riley Foster. There's no way this is his real name or her real name. What are some of your favorite best ball picks and just general advice on drafting? I'm going to throw it to you, Jamey, since you are probably doing 3 best ball drafts right now.
You said something earlier on our podcast this morning about, not drafting early, and Dave sort of countered that with the Joe Mixon news about falling, players falling. And I think when you do these drafts early, like you get great values on injured players. So I tend to look for some of like the cheaper stack options. So like a Calvin Ridley, Cam Ward build is something that I do a lot of. The Browns stacks are easy to do. You want to find a way to get late quarterbacks that can sort of stack up with some high-end wide receivers. So like Flacco and Jerry Jeudy, for example. Bo Nix and Cortland Sutton is one of the stacks I tend to fall into a lot. A lot of people are going to go for some of the high-end quarterbacks and try and get the receivers. I try to go the opposite route and try and find some of the better values at quarterbacks. So getting a CeeDee Lamb, George Pickens, Dak Prescott stack is something I do a lot of as well.
All right, next up, Nigel needs advice on a dynasty trade. Tight end premium. Jefferson and a 26 round 2 pick. Rice, Addison, and a mid-round 1st pick in 2026. Which side do you prefer? Dave, real quick.
I prefer the Jefferson side because it's Justin Jefferson, and I think he's going to be very good for a long time.
All right, last one. Let's get the Ben tweet up here. There it is. How many more seasons of softball will you play? And the answer indefinitely. Yes. Ben is not my team, and Ben knows. I told Ben, I broke the news to him that I think I'm retiring from softball. I am the worst player on the worst team in the league, and I cost our team the game, single-handedly lost our team the game in the playoffs and ended our season. So I don't think I can show my face again, and I hate being so bad at softball. No. Yeah,
sorry,
it's awful. Yep, made an error, cost us a run. We lost 2-0. grounded out as the game-winning run with 2 outs in the 7th inning.
Oh.
Good at it, so I'm not going to do it. And I'm not good at making football predictions either, so I'm done with that. So you know what? Someone else will be hosting on Wednesday. We'll talk to you then. Hey, listen to the Fantasy Football Today podcast. For Dave and Jamey, I'm Adam. Thanks so much for watching and listening. And we'll talk to you on Wednesday, 1 p.m. Eastern. Maybe I'll make a surprise appearance. See ya.